and then we're going to write Kelly. She gets to travel up front with us all, Daniel. And all the others.
My name is Kim Thehoff.
And this is a story about your beautiful little girl, Kelly.
And this is her story.
All right, and it's only 2 months. She's only had 2 months.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what happened.
Well, I'm going to kind of start past when the event happened because there's more to the story. And this may be a lot of people's story. I've thought about this a lot. I know I can't be the only person this happened to. She died in 1980. But at the autopsy, the doctor that did the autopsy told us that there was encephalopathy, and he led us to believe that that happened when she died as a result of her dying. And I was a very young mother. I was only 22 years old, and I had no idea. You know, I was still in shock. Okay, I'd already been through the sheriff comes to the house and asks you questions, and they're going to make sure that there's nothing criminal that happened and those kind of things. So I didn't believe that a healthy baby could just stop breathing. None of us have to remember to breathe, but they said SIDS. That's what they said. And so for years and years and years and years and years and years, I knew nothing. So in 2011, I lost my job, and I got myself a new cell phone in August, and my older daughter, was asking me if I had been seeing or had heard about a special that was on CNN. And it's kind of a controversial subject, much like this subject, but it was Sanjay Gupta, weed. And I was like, no, I haven't heard of that. And so she tells me what it's about, and I'm kind of looking on my phone now because I can do that instead of sit at the computer. And I find it, and I see what it's about, and that, it's about, this particular one was about children that had seizure disorders that were not controlled by medication. So they're giving these children marijuana, cannabis, to help control the seizures. So, I'm just do that, but I'm a voracious reader. And so I started thinking, what other things could I read about and look up and all kinds of things. And I just kind of, if you will, I kind of stumbled into vaccine injury. And just in November of 2015, I put it all together, what happened, because I had no idea. I mean, when they tell you SIDS, what do? You have no recourse. You just have to take it. And I've heard several stories of people that have said that they figured out later on that this is what happened. But oddly enough, the doctor who did the autopsy, the coroner's office, the hospital where she died, her pediatrician, nobody has any of her records. They're all gone. So I sent away for her death certificate so that I could see it, because I'd never seen it. I knew she was dead. I didn't need to see it, And so he wrote sudden infant death syndrome, and then the second reason he wrote was septicemia with a question mark after it. And when I started really looking up, like encephalopathy and septicemia, how does a less than a 2-month-old baby get that? It had to be the vaccines. There was nothing else was going on with this child. She was perfectly healthy. She was perfectly fine. And people that I speak to on Facebook and through email and stuff.
Do you remember how long after her vaccines that she died?
Well, back then we went for 6 weeks checkups, and we were getting ready to move from one part of one county to another. And so I remember I went for a 6-week checkup, and I think that she went with me. And so it was between 6 weeks and that week before we moved, and she was less than 8 weeks old. She was 7.5 weeks old when she passed away. And there was nothing. There was no sign. I mean, I put her down to sleep, and I, went back a couple hours later to check on her, and she was gone. I mean, and it was horrific. It was something that you never ever think is going to happen to you. And from that day forward, I've never ever thought that again, that anything couldn't happen to me, because probably the worst thing that could ever happen to me happened to me. So and I tried to get confirmation, but even I've heard so many people, even earlier today, the lady said, both those ladies this morning said they go back to the doctor and no doctor will say, and I think it's a crime. I think it's a crime that they can get away with saying this. And then I think of all the people, like when I went through the sheriff coming to the house and asking me questions and looking at her bed and the whole thing, and some people, people are in prison for doing something to their children that they didn't do, and you're falling apart. I fell apart after she passed away, and my marriage disintegrated, and if it wouldn't have been for my older daughter, I wouldn't have made it. And I know lots of people feel that way, and I'm sure there's some people that haven't. I believe that. It's a painful thing, and it's been 36 years, but it took me 35 years to figure out what happened. And so last year was the first year, on her birthday and on the anniversary of her death, that I had any idea what had happened to her. And so it kind of brought it all, a little closer to the surface, if you will. And there are some people that are still going through it, and people like your family and the Chollicks, their children are injured, and they live every day with that. I'm hoping that it changes soon. I believe it will.
There's no words really.
No, there are none.
She's adorable.
She was. And I believed in vaccines. I have 3 children. They were all, the one that was born after her, fully vaccinated, because I was clueless. And I didn't even find out until 2015 about the vaccine injury compensation program. I went and talked to my senator, or my representative. She knew nothing about it either. It's not right.
So, what is your advice to the young parent, the young 22-year-old mother who is about to vaccinate her daughter because the doctors tell her it's safe?
She needs to do tons and tons of research. Back in 1980, there probably were people that knew that they weren't safe, but there wasn't a way to get that information out to the masses like there is now. And there wasn't an easy way to look at all of that, to go somewhere without leaving your home and taking your children and doing research.
What's incredible to me, that this was happening, so far back in the 80s and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If they just admitted the truth back then, none of our children
I know.
would
I
be
think
damaged.
about that. I think about
Think
that.
about all these babies here
Yes.
that would be saved
Mhm.
if they just done what they should have done in the first place.
That's right. If they wouldn't have lied, they would have listened.
Someone's asking you who your senators are.
Bob Hall is one of my senators. Ted Cruz was one of my senators, state senators, but I went to my local. So Bob Hall is my representative in Texas, my senator, and Cindy Burkett is the woman that I spoke to that's in my district, 113, and she had no idea. She had no idea.
Well, we need to write your daughter's name on the bus. You've already submitted your story to Vaxxed.com. Well
did.
done. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Baby Kelly is up front with Daniel and our lovely girls. And so they will travel with us right to the end of this.